I remember it like it was yesterday, the exact moment when I was jerked awake by this weird, almost scratching noise. Like something was dragging itself along the ceiling right above my bed. At first, I thought I'd just dreamt it, but then it came again, sharper this time. I sat up, heart racing, and listened closer. The thing is, the noise wasn't coming from inside my apartment. Nope, it was definitely from upstairs, which was odd because, as far as I knew, there was no one living above me. The building manager had told me that apartment was sealed off, empty for years. So, naturally, my brain went straight to conspiracy mode. Who, or what, was up there? I rubbed my eyes and looked around my tiny, cluttered bedroom. The dim glow from the street lamp outside barely lit the peeling wallpaper and that old poster I hadn't bothered to take down since moving in. It was just me here, and yet, that scratching, scraping sound just wouldn't quit. I tried shaking the thought off. Probably just the pipes or the building settling, I told myself. Old buildings do that, right? But then, the sound morphed into something more deliberate. Like someone dragging a chair or maybe trying to unlock a stubborn door. I stared at my ceiling, wondering how someone could even be up there without me noticing during the day. Every hour I spend in this place, I'd never caught a glimpse of a neighbor upstairs. The building manager swore the unit was condemned, locked tight with no key given out. Yet here I was, wide awake at 3 a.m., listening to mysterious nighttime visitors living in a space officially non-existent. I sat on the edge of my bed, the question settling deep in my mind. If no one's supposed to be there, who in the world was living upstairs? And how long had they been there without anyone knowing? It was strange, unsettling, and honestly, a bit fascinating. I figured I wasn't going to get to sleep anytime soon, so maybe, just maybe, it was time to find out. My apartment was one of those relics that time seemed to have forgotten, and maybe for good reason. The kind of place where the wiring creaks and groans like an old man with a bad back, and the wooden floors sigh under every step as if they're secretly plotting an escape. It was the kind of charm I'd half admired when I first moved in, but now, well, it just felt tired. The windows rattled on windy nights, and the paint peeled in curling strips like dead skin. I'm not sure if it was the building's age or neglect, but every corner had a story to tell, a story mostly about wear and neglect, I figured. And yet this building had character, if you could call it that. It was nestled on a sleepy street in a small city that felt like it barely made a commercial break before going back to napping. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, and no one's business was ever really their own. Enter Mrs. A's. Wilkins, my upstairs neighbor from 2 floors above me, who seemed to have taken it upon herself to be the building's unofficial historian, detective, and gossip queen. She was in her late 70s, if not older, with silver hair perpetually pulled back into a tight bun and glasses that magnified her eyes in a way that made you feel like she could see right through you. She carried an arsenal of opinions and a fondness for unsolicited advice that was borderline impressive. I ran into her in the dimly lit hallway one afternoon while I was hauling bags of groceries up the stairs. She was lurking by the mailboxes, already waiting to pounce on fresh news. "So, you noticed that odd silence from upstairs, huh?" she asked, leaning conspiratorially close enough that I could smell her faint perfume, a mix of lavender and something floral but aged. Silence? Actually, it's more like noises in the night, I said, trying to sound casual, but honestly feeling a little embarrassed that I might be coming off as paranoid. She raised an eyebrow, her curious smile hiding a secret she seemed eager to spill. "Oh, honey, that apartment's supposed to be empty. Manager said it's been sealed for years." "Yeah, that's what I thought too, but the noise is, I don't know. Something's definitely going on up there," I confessed, feeling a little crazed talking about it with a stranger, except she definitely wasn't a stranger. "Wait, Mrs. Seitz." Wilkins nodded as if she'd been waiting for something like this forever. "You're not the first to hear something. I've been here longer than most, and I've always said there's a story in that unit. You ever notice how sometimes the hallway smells like cooking, or sometimes like a wet dog? And that one time, last November, I swear I heard music, old jazz from the 40s or something, drifting out from behind that door." "Cooking? Music? Wet dog?" I echoed, eyebrows knitting. "But the apartment is locked tight, right? How would any of that happen?" She shrugged, eyes twinkling. "That's the puzzle, isn't it? Locked doors don't always mean locked stories. You ever met the manager, Mr. Hart?" "Once, in passing. He's pretty tight-lipped about the upstairs place. Says it's sealed and off-limits, no exceptions." Mrs. Wilkins nodded knowingly. "Oh, he's careful, all right. But trust me, there's something there." She tapped the side of her nose with a wrinkled finger like she was sharing classified intel. "I've seen him glance up every now and then, like he hopes no one's watching him peek." As she chatted, I took in the details. The patched-up door to the upstairs apartment, the faint smell lingering in the hallway that sometimes turned musty, sometimes oddly fresh, as if someone was trying to disguise something. I started to think about how, during the day, the building felt deserted on that floor. No mail, no visitors, no moving shadows behind drawn curtains. Yet the sounds, the smells, the occasional glimpse of light flickering past the cracked ceiling, those all said otherwise. Weaknesses. Wilkins caught me staring at the ceiling where the noises had woken me and smirked. See anything up there yet? Not exactly, it's like a ghost apartment. I chuckled, but the chill in my spine didn't quite match. Ghosts don't cook, she said firmly. Then, after a beat, lowered her voice. Or maybe they do, and that's the real mystery. Before I could respond, the loud clang echoed somewhere above us, making us both jump. See what I mean? She whispered with a sly grin. You're in for a wild ride, kid. I stepped back, heart thudding, but an odd excitement bubbled beneath the nerves. The mystery wasn't going away anytime soon, and thanks to Mrs. Wilkins, I suddenly had more questions than answers. Who was this unseen tenant? What secrets were tucked behind that locked door? And more importantly, why was everyone pretending it didn't exist? I glanced up at the ceiling and felt a strange mixture of dread and curiosity swirl in my chest. Whatever or whoever was up there, I had a feeling this was just the beginning. So I decided to start poking around, but subtly. You don't just march up to a locked, supposedly empty apartment and start banging on the door without raising some eyebrows, or worse, suspicion. First thing, I tried listening closely. I'd sit in the hallway near that mysterious door, headphones off, pretending to read or check my phone. And the sounds? They were definitely real. Sometimes soft footsteps shuffled, like someone pacing or maybe moving furniture. Other times, I caught these strange, faint smells wafting through the slightly cracked doorframe. It was bizarre. Sometimes fresh bread, sometimes something funky, kind of like wet dog. Yeah, the same weird smell Mrs. Wilkins mentioned. One evening, I finally gathered the nerve to try the door. Of course, it was locked tight, no surprise there. I ran my fingers over the rusty old doorknob, feeling the rough metal that seemed to resist any intrusion. I even tried to peek through the rusty mail slot, though the light was too dim and the angle wrong. No luck. I wondered if anyone ever used that key, or if it just sat there, a relic from a time long past. Next, I decided to play nice with the building manager, Mr. Hart. I caught him near the mailboxes on one gloomy afternoon when he was delivering some notices. Straight up, I asked him about the apartment above me. You're sure no one lived there? I said, trying to sound casual, like I wasn't about to accuse him of hiding tenants or staging a conspiracy web in our creaky building. He looked me over with those sharp eyes of his, like he was sizing up whether I was serious or crazy. We sealed that apartment off years ago, he said firmly. No keys have been handed out. As far as I know, it's empty, off limits. Maintenance hasn't been inside in ages. I pressed further, telling him about the noises and smells. Maybe he'd have an explanation pipe, squatters, a raccoon nibbling on something electrical. But he just shrugged, no change in expression. Old buildings make old noises, he said. Smells vary depending on the weather. You hear things, you imagine things. I wasn't buying it, not really. Then, a week later, right when I was starting to dismiss the whole thing as me being a little too jumpy, I found something. It was an ordinary day, really. I was heading to the basement laundry room when I noticed something odd near the bottom of the stairs leading upstairs. Just a tiny glint on the floor, a key, alone sitting next to a discarded newspaper folding. My heart jumped. I mean, who would just leave a key lying around like that? I picked it up gingerly and turned it over. Old, rusty, with a small tag that said 5B. Now, 5B was the number of the apartment that was supposed to be sealed off. My brain scrambled. Was someone moving in and out while everyone pretended the place was empty? Was this some kind of secret? My fingers tensed around the key as I stared at it, my chest suddenly tight with a mix of dread and excitement. I decided that night to try the key. I crept up the stairs, every creak underfoot feeling like a drumbeat in a silent opera. Reaching the door, I slid the key into the lock. It didn't turn. Stiff and stubborn. I jiggled it a little harder. A click! The lock gave way with a reluctant groan. My jaw dropped wide. No way. That door couldn't just open like that. With shaky hands, I pushed the door a few inches open. It was pitch dark inside, the stale scent hitting me instantly. The door creaked louder than expected as it shifted open, revealing a narrow hallway cloaked in shadows. I saw old, worn wallpaper peeling down the walls and a faint beam of light flickering from deeper inside. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from somewhere inside, heavy, deliberate. Whoever or whatever was in there, they knew I'd just opened their door. My stomach flipped upside down. I debated bolting down the stairs, dropping the key and pretending none of this happened. But curiosity, that stubborn beast, kept me rooted. Then another sound, something soft like a whisper or a rustle. I squinted into the darkness, trying to catch a glimpse of the unseen tenant who'd been hidden from everyone for who knows how long. I barely caught a glimpse of a figure moving further into the shadows. Then, silence. The footsteps faded away. That night, lying in bed with the door now locked tight again, I couldn't shake the feeling that the mystery had just gone from curious to downright personal. Mrs. Wilkins was right, there was definitely a story here. And now, with this key in my pocket, I was part of it. It was wild, a little dangerous, and somehow utterly exhilarating. But honestly, I wasn't sure whether I was solving a mystery or stepping into a trap. Whatever was hiding upstairs wasn't going to stay quiet for much longer. The next time I summoned the courage, I had the key in my pocket and a flashlight in hand. Though, honestly, the building's ancient wiring made the faint bulbs along the hallway flicker enough to keep things eerily visible. I crept back to the door, half expecting it to slam shut or for some ominous figure to appear right in front of me. But the door was quiet, slightly ajar like some secret invitation I'd been waiting for. Pushing it open just a little wider, I stepped inside. The air hit me like a damp blanket stale, with that odd mixture of mustiness and, was that faint cinnamon spice? I frowned, glancing down a narrow hallway lined with flimsy wallpaper peeling from decades of neglect. The flickering light came from a single bulb hanging by a frayed cord at the far end. I moved cautiously, the wooden floorboards creaking beneath my feet in that unmistakably tired way, like an old dog reluctantly greeting a stranger. It was quiet now, almost too quiet. My heart thudded loudly in my chest as I edged closer to the light. Then, from the side room, a sudden noise broke the stillness. A shuffle, soft but definite. I froze. A door opened just a crack and out peeked a frail, gray-haired woman, eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and relief. She blinked at me, a tentative smile curling her lips. "I didn't expect company," she said quietly, voice a little raspy but warm. I blinked and took a slow step closer, unsure whether to run or introduce myself. "I'm, sorry," I stammered. "I didn't know someone was actually living here." She chuckled softly, then nodded. "Well, I suppose that was the idea, to be hidden. I'm Edith." We ended up sitting in that little room turned living space, really, with her telling me the story of why she'd been living in secrecy for years. Turns out, Edith was once a tenant of the building's heyday, way back when it was buzzing with life. When the building started to fall into disrepair, the manager sealed off units to prevent squatters, but Edith, an artist, had chosen to quietly stay on, fixing up the apartment slowly and quietly. She refused to leave the place she'd called home for decades. "I couldn't afford anywhere else," she said simply, "and I guess, after a while, people just forgot I was here." She explained how she kept things low profile, no parties, no noise, minimal trips outside, mostly living in her tiny world of paintings and old jazz records she played softly through headphones. "And the noises? The smells?" I asked, still processing it all. She smiled wistfully. "Oh, the smells are my cooking experiments. I live for cinnamon rolls on Sunday mornings. And the wet dog scent? That's Mr. Whiskers." I blinked again. Mr. Whiskers? The rest of the building thought the apartment was empty, but Edith had a cat the entire time? "His favorite place is that hallway outside when the sun hits just right," she said, amused. "As for the noises, well, I guess old buildings do make their own kind of music." Sitting there, chatting with Edith, I felt the mystery unravel into something much softer. Loneliness, resilience, and a little bit of stubbornness wrapped in layers of dust and secrecy. Of course, I did ask about Mr. Hart, the building manager. Edith sighed. "Oh, Mr. Hart? He knows I'm here." "Keeps our secret from me. I think he just wants to avoid paperwork. Besides, it's easier than dealing with the city inspectors." That made me chuckle, imagining the stern manager cautiously tiptoeing around the truth. Edith's story gave the building a new pulse. It wasn't just a rundown relic hiding ghosts. It was a living, breathing place full of quiet stories and whispered histories. The creaks and groans weren't just annoying quirks anymore. They were part of a life that refused to be erased. But just as the layers peeled back, I couldn't help but feel this wasn't the whole picture. Edith was so open, so calm, yet the building still held its secrets. I glanced back at that sealed door across the hall, the one Edith never let me peek inside. A part of me wondered if there was even more hidden upstairs, stories darker or stranger than I was ready to face. Walking back to my apartment later that evening, the familiar creak beneath my step didn't feel quite so eerie anymore. But the faintest trace of that old jazz melody drifted down the hallway just out of reach, reminding me that in this building, the past and present danced together, sometimes a little too close for comfort.